So eat. Come on, here we go, guys. Greet the day, everybody. How you guys doing this morning, huh? Everybody doing well? Everybody's looking good. Still no luck with the skunk trap. I think it's lurking somewhere under the barn over there. So if you've seen our last couple of videos, you know that we've had something of an outbreak with skunks. And I say skunks because I'm pretty sure it's multiple. And so yeah, I still haven't had much luck catching those skunks. You know, one of the questions I've received lately in the comments has been whether or not I've got a gun, and people telling me I should go get my gun and shoot them and get an air rifle or a 22 or a shotgun. And so I figured today's video would be a good time to try to address the topic of guns and whether or not I use them here on our farm. I know, that's a totally non-controversial topic, right? Release the Kraken! Morning, guys. I feel like the ducks make a great thermometer. You can always tell the temperature here on the farm by how quickly they run out of the duck house. Right now it's in the upper teens, and so I think they're a little bit reluctant. I guess that's understandable. Everybody up! Everybody up! Let's go! Let's go! Careful, guys! So even though I installed these grip strips here, it's basically like sandpaper type stuff, and I put them all up and down here. The ducks still seem to be slipping. I don't know. I think come next year I'm gonna have to re-engineer this whole ramp situation. It's probably been my biggest design flaw with the duck house. At some point I might end up actually making a whole video about the lessons learned around building this thing and what I do differently and what I'm trying to change right now. How are you doing, girl? You're all alone. Where's the rest of the flock, eh? Huh? Oh, there they are. Yeah, the ducks love hiding underneath that duck house. So when I was a kid, I grew up in a household that was decidedly a non-gun household. My mother abhorred guns. My father abhorred guns. My parents didn't own any firearms in the house. We never went hunting as a family activity. Heck, even if I wanted to have a gun as a toy, that was very, very much frowned upon.
I want an official Red Ryder carbine action 2-inch range ball air rifle. You'll shoot your eye up! You'll shoot your eye up!
So growing up in central suburban Connecticut, didn't really give me a lot of exposure to guns as a kid. You know, I had friends and their fathers who were into guns and they went hunting and did that sort of thing, but that was something that my family absolutely was not involved in. To be honest, I kind of grew up as a person who had no experience with guns and was frankly a little bit gun shy. But that's not to say that I didn't necessarily fetishize guns themselves. Like any regular old red-blooded American kid, I was into action movies and G.I. Joe and comic books, and you always saw all these great depictions of guns. And guys with guns looking so cool.
Hasta la vista, baby.
And it was the tough guy with the gun.
Go ahead. Make my day.
And so that part of gun culture was always sort of buried in the back of my brain and something that I would always think about. So around like the late 90s, early 2000s, and through the 2000s, you know, as school shootings became more prominent and more of a problem, and mass shootings really just became a bigger and bigger issue within the United States, I started to take a very strong anti-gun stance. You know, really believing that there was no good reason ever to own a gun, so why don't we just really restrict people's ability to access guns and limit that stuff? And from a public safety standpoint, I do believe there's a certain element of gun restricting leading to greater safety. And I got to admit, growing up in a non-gun household made me feel almost scared of guns a little bit. And I think there's a lot of people out there who grow up in non-gun households who end up scared of guns because they're not exposed to guns and they're not made comfortable around them. At least that's what I think happened with me. But when I moved out here to Vermont, I had to reconcile some thinking and some things around guns because it's very different out here. There's a very healthy appreciation and respect for guns around here. I mean, despite the fact that we're a very liberal and left-leaning state here in Vermont, there's a strong hunting culture, there's a very healthy respect for guns. We've got some pretty permissive gun ownership laws around here. And to be honest, guns are just kind of commonplace. And you know, living out here where I'm having to deal with things like predator pressure and vermin control and all sorts of wee beasties. Look at that. Right there's a beastie. See that track? But you know, living out here on the farm, I gotta say, I've started to grow a different perspective on guns. Because guns are actually important, and guns are actually really necessary. Guns are required for predator control or vermin control or dispatching injured or soon-to-be butchered livestock. Hunting is a legitimate form of gathering natural and healthy food. And so after I got over my initial culture shock of being up here and being exposed to guns and having lots of friends who were into guns, I actually got comfortable with the idea of owning guns myself, and I now do. But I do it in a way where it's not about glamorizing the type of gun or how the gun makes me feel. It's much more about having guns that serve specific purposes. Much like I have different types of shovels on the farm for different types of digging and earth movement tasks. There's different types of guns you need on the farm for different types of situations. I've used guns to go hunting, I've used guns to deal with predators. It's been part of what I've been doing here on the farm. It's a tool. And yeah, guns are wicked dangerous, but so is my circular saw. I take the proper precautions with my saw, I take the proper precautions with my guns. The way our society views guns is what actually makes it so much harder to deal with gun safety and manage gun safety issues. I think the fact that we're so polarized on the gun debate on one side or the other, it makes it hard to be somebody kind of sitting in the middle feeling like there absolutely is a place for guns and a rational, reasonable use of them, as well as potentially some measures of safety and registration that could potentially save some lives. To put it another way, I don't think this video is going to make most people happy. And I know some of you guys are going to be saying, hey, listen, duck boy, stick to the ducks or I'm out of here. I get that, and I understand, but to me, part of the evolution and the story that I've been going through and the progression I've been personally making is that shift in my relationship with guns and my beliefs shifting around guns. And so I feel like it's an important part of the story to share with you guys. And like I said, I think it's very important for us to have good civil debates and discussions around guns, restrictions on guns, use of guns. But with those words now shared, I will get off my soapbox and get back to the farm. So as you can see here, we have now completed entirely the livestock guardian dog fencing area. I'm excited. The puppy is coming next week. Me and my friend David are gonna go on a road trip to go get him, as well as his sister, which is going to David's house. I know some of you guys have expressed some concern about a puppy being potentially exposed to a bobcat or coyotes, but I do want to actually allay a couple of those concerns. So in the later evening, like in the middle of the night when we do have the packs of coyotes coming through, the dog will be actually locked up safely inside the old duck house. In the twilight and dusk hours, which is actually where I have some of my biggest predator risks right now, I'm just gonna have the dog outside. And I've also heard you guys expressing a real concern about me not having an adult dog. But to be honest, making sure that the dog gets trained up the proper way right from the beginning has been something that everybody who's an expert that I've talked to has strongly coached me on. And so I do not plan on getting an adult dog to bring here. It'll be starting with that one puppy, and then probably a year and a half from now, I will add a second dog into the mix, but not before this first one gets established. You know, philosophically speaking, the idea of adding the dog into the mix is important because one of the key values I have with my farm is that I want to try to be as in harmony with nature as I possibly can. Yes, that means sometimes I got to dispatch predators. Yes, that sometimes means I've got to trap a skunk and move it to a new location. But I'd rather try to control things natural ways. You know, we have our barn cats here, and they actually serve as the predator for a lot of the rodents and vermin, and they do a pretty darn good job of catching them. But there is a need for more of an apex predator, something to keep the pressure of the bigger, meaner predators like the coyotes and bobcats away from the farm. And establish a real presence and territory here with our farm. So that's why we're getting into the livestock guardian dog business and making it a big part of the farm. Hey look, there's our pond. It's starting to freeze over. I can put my foot through it. Well, I guess not. I guess I could go skating now here on the, uh-oh. Looks like I cracked this a little bit. What's gonna happen is this is gonna continue to fill up with snow and ice, and the whole pasture is gonna fill up with snow and ice. And when the springtime comes, my expectation is that all of the snow and ice from the pasture is gonna drain down this here swale that I've dug, and it's gonna fill up this pond. Naturally speaking, this area usually turns into like a mini pond every spring. If you look back at what we had even this past spring, this whole area was a giant puddle for the entire month of May and a good chunk of June. And so I fully expect to be able to use this again as a water area. But more to come on that one. How's it going, guys?